the love of money. Gotta make that money, man.
What's up, good people? It's Tiffany Tayus, the tax sale expert. I really don't know the direction I want to go with this this video that I'm currently doing, but it has been something that has been weighing heavy on my heart, and I want to use this as an opportunity to express myself and to get those thoughts out and share them with you, and hopefully you may agree or may not agree, but everyone is entitled to their own opinions, right? And so I am finna provide you mine. So the topic of this conversation is slavery. In today's age, a lot of people feel that slavery no longer exists. And we do know slavery was buku years ago, right? But it really wasn't that long ago. We have progressed within these years to where we can sustain on our own a lot of things that we have control over. So they feel that slavery no longer exists. But my opinion is, I kind of feel like it still does exist. You feel me? So I'm going to explain why I feel that it does. So back during slavery time, our people worked for slave masters. We were owned by slave masters or slave holders, right? And everything that we did came from them. We worked for them. They housed us. They fed us, even though it was shitty housing, crappy housing, and the worst of the food. They beat us. All these things, we all know the story, correct? We worked for them. We were owned by them. Well, here in 2023, I still feel that we still work for them. We still work for those same slave masters. Slave masters is money. You understand? I do understand that money makes the world go around. I do understand that. But I want to go through like a history lesson, a little explanation of why I feel that we are still working for our slave owners. We're still working for our slave masters and our slave holders, okay? So, I have money right here. Then this is the topic, is money. So, well, first and foremost, I want to give us the $100 bill. Good old Benjamin Franklin, right? Benjamin Franklin. A little information about Benjamin Franklin is the fact that he owned slaves. He did own slaves. And he also advertised the sale of slaves in his newspaper, which was the Pennsylvania Gazette. So this is one of our slave masters, our slave holders. Good old Benjamin Franklin, okay? And you get me? Okay. So the next one is going to be a good old $50 bill. Nice crisp 50, right? This is Ulysses S. Grant. A little information about good old Ulysses S. Grant. They say he owned one slave, and that slave was William Jones. Some reports say that Mr. Jones was given to him, and other reports say that his father-in-law sold Mr. Jones to him. But his own father, Ulysses Grant, was completely against slavery, okay? But Mr. Ulysses S. Grant did own one slave, okay? Now, let's go to our good old $20 bill. And that $20 bill is whom? Mr. Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, okay, good people? Let's get some information on Mr. Andrew Jackson. Now, he owned 2 plantations. Mr. Jackson owned 2 plantations with 161 slaves between the 2 of them. So, Mr. Jackson, he was heavy with owning slaves, with being a slave master and a slave owner and slave holder, okay? So our next one we're gonna talk about is $10 bill. Mr. Alexander Hamilton. That's a $10 bill. Alexander Hamilton, good people. Now, with Mr. Alexander Hamilton, it has been stated that he never owned one Negro slave. Never owned one Negro slave. So when they specify never owned one Negro slave, does that mean he owned other slaves? Which is quite interesting. It's a question, right? And he despised slavery, but he never confronted or never spoke up about other slave owners or slave holders. He never spoke against it, right? But I started doing a little bit more research about Mr. Hamilton, just due to the fact the whole thing when they were talking about never owned one Negro slave. I said, well, let me do a little bit more research on Mr. Hamilton, because that, it just was questionable, right? It would be, okay. So, been brought to Mr. James Hardy attention that back in 1798, that New York, they had this this yellow fever that had went about, and they were keeping track of all the people who passed away from yellow fever, right? And so on these records, it had came out that Mr. Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton's name was on a report, and it was in the name, and it went in this fashion. It stated that a black man, the black man of. So this is the report of everyone who was passing away from this yellow fever back in 1798. On this report, it said that the black man of Hamilton Alexander, comma, Major General, comma, and his address 26 Broad, showing that a black man of, that means the slave of Alexander Hamilton, which is a major general, that person had passed away, the black man of Major Hamilton, right? Okay, so then it was like, well, okay, that means that he did own some slaves, that he at least owned one, right? And then Alexander Hamilton, he was married. He was married to this lady named Eliza, Eliza. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, right? Well, he was married to her, and her father wrote his daughter, Eliza, which is Hamilton's wife, a letter. And in that letter, he was saying that, hey, he wrote, the distress you may have experienced from the death of one of your servants from yellow fever has deeply affected my feelings. May gracious heaven preserve you, my Hamilton, and the children from that fatal infection. So he's hoping that that infection that the slave had in their home doesn't affect the rest of them. You feel me? And he said that may gracious heaven preserve you, my Hamilton, and the children from the fatal infection. If I had known of Dick's death before the children had left me, they should not have gone. So they were with her father. So they had went on and went over there with the mother. And he said if he had known of Dick's death, which means that's that slave's name, they done called the man Dick. So Hamilton did own some slaves. You understand what I'm saying? But so Hamilton, he despised slavery, but he owned a slave. So it seems like Mr. Hamilton was a little sneaky with it. You understand? He despised it. He didn't speak against other folk, but come to find out he had one in his house. But we're going to go ahead on and go and move a little further. So, Abraham Lincoln, the $5 bill, Abraham Lincoln, okay? Abraham Lincoln, it's a lot going on with this individual here because I couldn't find any records that Mr. Lincoln owned any slaves. But they were saying this because Abraham Lincoln really wasn't a white individual. They called him Melungeon, but with him, he was a mixture of a lot of different races. And a lot of people do claim that he was black himself. And he could have had some black ancestral DNA within him, but he also had a lot of other nationalities within him. So that could play a major part on, first, why he didn't own any slaves that I was able to find, and that he holds a good position within the African American community because he is said to have saved us from slavery. You understand? To have ended slavery. But that's my research that I found on Mr. Abraham Lincoln. Okay, next we have the $2 bill. Do we know who this is on the $2 bill? Do y'all know? Y'all can go to the bank and get $2 bills, but you can't. But Ron always gives me $2 bills, so I had plenty of these to show. $2 bill is Mr. Thomas Jefferson. Mr. Thomas Jefferson, he owned well over 600 slaves. Okay, good people. Mr. Jefferson wasn't playing about that thing there. He was a true slave owner, slave holder, and slave master. And those terms run concurrent within my research: slave owner, slave holder, and slave master. But they all mean the same thing, right? Now, he has had multiple children with slave women, with his slave, the women that he has owned. And he has a lifelong slave owner, but condemned slavery. He has condemned slavery, and he attempted to restrict its expansion. But he had plenty of slaves, and he was making babies with them. Okay? Now, last but definitely not least, here we go. That $1 bill. George Washington. Good old George. Washington has been reported to own well over 300 slaves at Mount Vernon. You feel me? So, all of these dead presidents, all of these individuals, they have owned slaves, right? And so, when I say we are still working for our slave masters, that's exactly what I mean. We're still in slavery, and we're still working for our slave masters. And we have to change what we're doing, good people. So, these are all our slave masters. All of these. All of these individuals are our slave masters. And we break our butts every day. We rob people for these. We kill people for these. We go punch a clock just for this, just for these. And so when I say we're still in slavery and that we're still working for our slave owners, this is what I mean. Because we are still working for our slave owners. But we can't change what we're doing with this. You understand what I'm saying? We can change how we're spending this. Because if we spend this on items that bring us more money, more of these, then we're investing our slave masters. You understand? And we're putting our slave masters to work for us. You understand what I'm saying? So if we put these into instruments that create us more, that means our slave masters are working for us. Instead of putting them in other things that does not make us any money, that means we will continue to work for our slave masters. You kind of get what I'm saying? Does this make any sense to you? So, today is Black Friday. Today is Black Friday. We just had Thanksgiving, just passed, so it's Black Friday. So, where are you putting your slave owners at? Are you spending your slave owners on TVs? Is that TV going to make more money for you? Or are you spending your slave owners on clothes and purses and jewelry? Or are those items that you're spending this on going to make more money for you? Are you spending it on on anything that does not make more money for you? Then that means that you will continue to work for your slave owner. You will continue to be in slavery because you're going to continue to trade your time to work for your slave owner. You understand? But if you're on this end, you're putting your money into instruments, into items that make more money for you, that means you're putting your slave owners to work. You understand? If you put this 180, how much? 150, 70, 85, $88. You know, you can purchase land with $188. If you put this into some land, that means that you're putting your slave owners to work as opposed to your slave owners putting you to work. So let's change what we're doing with our slave owners. Are we going to continue to work for them for the rest of our lives until we die? Or are we going to put our slave owners to work for us? Come on now. It's time to change the narrative because we still working for them. We still busting our butt for them. 80, 90, 80 hours. Come on, we still working for them instead of putting them to work. This is what we have to do, y'all. We have to put them to work. Anyway, that's my whole little spiel, good people. I hope y'all understand what I'm saying. So with that being said, my name is Tiffany Tayus, the tax sale expert. I teach individuals how to acquire real estate through tax liens and tax deeds, and how to scale your ownership in order to have leverage, equity, and control over your life and your future. Now, if you're ready, and I mean if you're really ready to start controlling your assets by leveraging this equity, join us. Join the membership group today so you can get yourself some real estate.